Do you know what time it is? It's supernatural story time. And if you're easily scared, and even if you're not, there's only one thing left to do. Just turn off the lights, because these are stories that you listen to only in the dark. Dead End Stories, Volume 1, Story 1. Growing up, I was possessed by a fascination with gargoyles. My hometown was infested with them, over 1,000 at last count. After November 11th, 1926, when Route 66 sliced through the desert, the gargoyles of Mingo Ditch became a tourist curiosity as famous as the Wigwam Village. The town hall still displays grainy photos of 50s model cars choking Main Street, their drivers blissfully unaware of the stone ice tracking them from the eaves. As the two-lane roads mutated into distant interstates, the tourism industry shriveled like the surrounding scrubland. The travelers vanished, but the gargoyles remained. Back then, I assumed it was just an eclectic stop for a lunch break, a place to gawk at granite monstrosities before driving away. To make matters worse, Mingo Ditch didn't even have a hotel. Even as a child, the absence felt wrong. If we wanted people to visit our backwater grave, it made sense to provide a place for them to sleep. "Why don't we have a hotel in town, Dad?" I asked one night over dinner. He simply chewed, eyes anchored to his plate. Tom Morris was a man of few words, a deputy who didn't entertain questions that lacked utility. Usually he just grunted that he didn't know, but that night he actually looked at me. "It's not safe, Levi," he said. "Strangers in town invite trouble. We're a close-knit community. We have been since I was a boy." As an 8-year-old, stranger danger was a concept I understood. "Yeah, I guess it's not great having people we don't know wandering around," I replied, "but you're always saying we need business. A hotel could bring the tourists back." "A lot of risks," he muttered. "Like what?" More chewing, more staring. "Levi, we'll talk when you're older, but I'll tell you this. Strangers in town don't always bring the trouble. Sometimes the trouble happens to the strangers." He fell silent. No matter how much I pushed, the shutters had closed. We finished our meal in a vacuum of sound, but his words rotted in my mind. I couldn't fathom what kind of trouble could befall a visitor in a place as stagnant as Mingo Ditch. As I entered my teens, Dad and I grew closer. Being a single father and one of only 5 deputies took its toll. To ease his burdens, took over the chores. My list probably looked like yours: trash, laundry, vacuuming, with one grim exception: gargoyle maintenance. Twice a week I took a soft bristled brush and a bucket of water to the end of our walkway to scrub the 2 figures perched on their pedestals, Mert and Tank. Dad had named them when he bought the house. Every home, business, and government office in Mingo Ditch was legally required by building code to maintain at least 2 well-kept gargoyles at its entrance. They weren't just outside either. They sat on our fireplace mantel. Tiny stooped imps clung to the street signs and lampposts of Main Street, their stone grins frozen in the moonlight. Even the high school mascot was the grinning gargoyle, a cruel irony considering we had no sports teams. One night, while we sat in our recliners, the phone kitchen shrieked. Dad headed for the receiver. I surreptitiously lowered the TV volume, my ears straining. "Hello," he said. "No, I'm with Levi. What's wrong?" A pause. You're kidding me. Where's the car?" "I'll be there. Have Kit bring the ambulance, but don't run the lights." He hung up. I jerked the volume back up, pretending I hadn't heard the tremor in his voice. He walked into the living room with a forced, brittle smile. "Sorry, kiddo. Car trouble's at the edge of town. In bed by 10. He was out the door before I could nod. Usually he'd flick on his cruiser lights the moment he hit the driveway. Tonight he bled into the darkness and total silence. The next morning I found him in his recliner, still in his uniform. He was so motionless I thought he'd passed away, but his eyes were wide open, underlined by bruised dark bags. "Dad, you okay?" "Yeah," he whispered, not looking at me. "Just a late night. Go to school." That was the beginning of his decay. Over the next few months, the nighttime calls surged. Every morning he was there in the chair, wrinkled, graying, staring at nothing. He gave me generic excuses: breakdowns, drunks, break-ins. None of it made sense for a town this small. One night the phone rang again. I heard him repeat an address. This time I didn't go to bed. I waited 5 minutes, hopped on my bike, and pedaled into the dark. As I rode, the streetlights glinted off the agate discs of the gargoyle's eyes. Usually I've found the statues fascinating. Tonight it felt like a stone legion was watching my every movement. I reached a small park near the address. I hid my bike and crawled through the brush. Red and blue lights flickered off the playground equipment. Something was wrong with the landscape. I scanned the scene trying to figure out what was missing. Then the first roar tore through the air. It was deeper than a lion's, a subterranean sound that made the marrow in my bones vibrate. Panic flooded my chest. "Crap!" a voice shouted. It was my father. "It's over. They're dead. No one else is here." A second roar resounded. I pressed myself into the dirt. "Time to go back to sleep, Crep." Dad bellowed. "The danger is gone. You can sleep." A heavy rhythmic pounding shook the earth. I looked toward the park's central pavilion and finally realized what was missing. The massive gargoyle that usually sat atop the concrete slab was gone. Then the beast backed into view. It was a colossal nightmare of granite, moving with a feline grace that should have been impossible for stone. Its ears twitched, horns jutted from its jaw. Its mouth was a cavern of stone teeth dripping with fresh, hot gore. Its agate eyes burned with the reflection of the patrol cars. My father walked in front of it, arms raised, his voice a soothing hum. Before I could stop myself, I screamed, "Dad, run!" Dad's face contorted in pure terror. The creature pivoted. Before I could even draw breath, the stone beast leapt. It pinned me against the tree, its massive weight crushing the air from my lungs, its flat, cold nose pressed against my chest. "Don't fight it, Levi," Dad screamed. "Be still. Let it smell you." I froze as the horror inhaled. It nudged me, flecks of someone else's blood falling from its muzzle onto my shirt. After an eternity, it backed away and padded to its pedestal. It settled, adjusted its stone neck, and turned back into a statue. Dad ran to me, clutching me to his chest as I sobbed. He drove me home in silence, bypassing two other deputies who were draping a sheet over a mangled heap of meat near a car with its door ripped off. Back at the house, over a glass of whiskey, he told me the truth. The gargoyles weren't statues. They were the town's guardians. If anyone from outside stayed after dark, the nearest stone creature would wake and consume them. There was no hotel because there could be no guests. "Why don't we leave?" I stammered. "We can't," he whispered. "If you're born here, they know you're sent. They think they're protecting us. But if we try to leave forever, they'll hunt us down and bring us back. Or they'll kill us." I thought of Mert and Tank in our yard. Their chipped, smiling faces. I didn't ask how he knew they'd kill us. I didn't want to know. I stayed until graduation, watching my father waste away as a cleanup crew for a pack of stone monsters. Then I broke. I packed my truck and drove until I hit the Atlantic Ocean. South Portland, Maine. I'd lived here for 5 years. I'm a cook. I like the snow. It's quiet. But a few weeks ago I saw tracks in the snow around my apartment. Too large for a dog. Too heavy. Tonight as I sat by the window, I looked towards the docks. The lights reflected off the water, reminding me of agate eyes. And there, perched on the wooden pillars of the pier, sat two familiar figures, Mert and Tank. They found me. They want to take me back to the desert, but I've spent enough time around stone to know one thing. I'm not going back. Story number 2. Forget the songs about dark desert highways. When you're piloting 80,000 pounds of steel through the New Mexico wasteland at 3 a.m., there is no music. There's only the rhythmic hum of the tires and the white line fever. That hypnotic trance where the miles bleed together until you realize you've been driving for 2 hours with no memory of the road. I was a cross-country driver for Cavendish Trucking. No wife, no kids, just me and my blue Kenworth W900. I lived in that cab. It was my fortress, equipped with everything a man needs to survive the nomadic life. But a fortress is only as strong as its gates, and mine were about to be kicked in. I was hauling a load of bar fixtures from Alabama, cutting across Route 66 near Albuquerque. The desert night was beautiful, a deceptive silver-lit lie. The full moon turned the sand to bone, and the road ahead was an infinite ribbon of black. Then the radio died. The classic rock faded into a jagged wall of static before dropping into total silence. I rolled down the windows, letting the dry, biting air fill the cab. I was exhausted. I'd pounded a gallon of truck stop coffee, but the caffeine had betrayed me, turning my blood into lead. My eyelids felt like they were weighed with stones. "Wake up, Nat. Fight it," I growled at my reflection in the dark glass. I reached for my coffee cup, eyes leaving the road for a heartbeat. When I looked back, the world had changed. He was standing in the dead center of the lane. His coat wasn't fur. It was a void, a patch of the devil's own soul, stitched into the shape of a beast. His eyes weren't reflective. They glowed with a rhythmic internal crimson heat. When my high beams hit him, he didn't flinch. He ran. He charged the truck head-on with a speed that defied physics, his hideous pulsating face fixed in a snarl. "Holy shit," I screamed, slamming the brakes. The steering wheel fought me like a living thing. The passenger tire caught the soft shoulder, and gravity took over. Momentum screamed as the trailer jackknifed, slamming into the cab with a bone-jarring thud. The world tilted, glass exploded. Metal shrieked against the asphalt, a sound like a giant's teeth grinding together. I was flung like a rag doll, saved only by the nylon bite of my seatbelt. When the world finally stopped spinning, I was suspended upside down in a tomb of twisted steel and thick gray smoke. The smell of hot oil and ruptured fluids filled my lungs. I unbuckled, falling hard onto the shattered passenger window. I reached for my phone to call dispatch, but the air in the cab suddenly grew cold. Unnaturally, impossibly cold. From the darkness outside, a low growl began. It wasn't a dog's growl. It was a mechanical vibration that rattled my teeth. Thud. Something heavy landed on the driver's side door, now positioned above my head. Scritch, scritch. Claws raked across the metal, peeling paint like wet paper. I looked through the spider-web windshield. Two burning red embers stared back. The beast was inches away. Its snout twitched wet and black as it pulled back its teeth to reveal rows of translucent fangs. It wasn't drooling. It was foaming with a glowing, caustic bile. I scrambled into the sleeper berth, my shoulders screaming as I slammed into the mini-fridge. The dog let out a bark, a hollow demonic shriek that echoed with the sounds of 1,000 car wrecks. I'm not a religious man, but in that moment, the Bible buried in the rubble of my cab felt like the only weapon I had. I clutched it to my chest, whispering prayers I didn't know I remembered. For 3.5 hours, the beast circled. I could hear its heavy, rhythmic breathing through the steel. Occasionally, those red eyes would appear at the broken glass, watching, waiting for the shadows to get long enough to reach me. Just before dawn, the dog grew frantic. It knew its time was short. It lunged at the windshield, its massive head shattering the safety glass. Shards sprayed across me. I retreated into the corner, reciting the Lord's Prayer as the monster's foaming maw forced its way into my sanctuary. It snarled, coiled its muscle to pounce, and then the sun. A single sliver of gold light pierced the horizon. The creature let out an ear-piercing shriek of agony. Thick, oily smoke began pouring from its eyes and ears. Before my eyes, the solid mass of the beast disintegrated, exploding into a cloud of ash that vanished into the morning breeze. I sat there until my trembling stopped, the silence of the desert finally returning to normal. I don't drive rigs anymore. I moved to a desk in dispatch. I took a pay cut, and I live in a cramped flop house where the walls are thin and the showers are shared. My girlfriend Natasha thinks I just had a bad accident. My therapist calls it PTSD and gives me Zoloft to dull the night terrors. But I know better. The owner of the company kept my wrecked Kenworth in the side yard. He left it exactly as it was found, with a sign across the shattered windshield, "Believe the myth." Sometimes when the sun goes down and I'm sitting in my small room with my coffee, I look at my scarred shoulder and remember the sound of those claws on the door. To all you drivers out there, if you see a shadow in the middle of the road with eyes like burning coals, don't swerve. Don't fight to sleep, just pull over. Because the black dog doesn't just want your truck. He's waiting for you to blink. Story number 3. It was a night like any other until the dark began to bleed. I sat in the patrol car, a cigarette dangling from my left hand, my elbow anchored to the window frame. Route 50 is famous for its loneliness, but in central Nevada, lonely is an understatement. It is a void. My job was simple: stare into the black paint of the desert and report if the world decided to change. I was an intern for the highway patrol, which meant I drew the graveyard shift on the road to nowhere. They gave me 2 rules. First, stay illuminated, let the darkness know I was there. Second, the one my training officer whispered with a look of genuine sickness: if you see an old Lincoln on Route 50 during the graveyard shift, let it go. Under no circumstances do you engage. Even if the bastard is doing 100, you stay in your seat and you pray he keeps driving. Specifically, a 1969 Lincoln with suicide doors. My mentor wouldn't say why. He just told me to follow the rule and keep my mind shut. I figured it was a hazing ritual, a ghost story to keep the rookie awake. I was wrong. At 3:24 a.m., the night suffocated me. The darkness was all-encompassing, a heavy velvet that made the idea of a morning sun feel like a fairy tale. Then a shape escaped the black. A 1969 Lincoln Continental, glossy and ink dark, screamed out of the void. It looked natural to the desert, a predator as ancient as the scorpions. I stepped out, radar gun in hand. The display flashed 120 miles per hour. Logic failed me. I figured the ghost story was just that, a story. And the rarity of the car was the punchline. I flicked on my lights, flooding the sagebrush with a strobe of red and blue, and gave chase. The car took 1,000 feet to acknowledge me, and it finally slowed. It did so with a haunting grace. I pulled up behind it, the silence of the desert rushing back in to fill the gaps between my heartbeats. I stepped out. My badge caught the Lincoln's taillights, casting a crimson glare across the asphalt. I tapped on the tinted driver's side window with my radar gun. The glass slid down with a hiss. The man inside was a nightmare of anatomy. He looked about 50, balding, with hair so heavily oiled it looked like wet tar. But his face, it was melting. His cheeks and lips sagged toward his chin like thick cooling wax. His eyes were voids, black, faded, and dead. One eyebrow was missing, and his skin looked like it was losing its grip on the bone. Then the smell hit me. It wasn't rot. It was a chemical shriek. The scent of a 1,000-acre industrial fire. It smelled like death and formaldehyde. "Sir," I stammered, gagging, "what is that smell?" He didn't answer. He opened his mouth in a slow, mechanical jerk. He had no teeth, just a cavern of pink, slick flesh. He stared through me with those lifeless eyes. I felt only cold, oily dread slide down my spine. I should have stayed in the car. I should have stayed in the dark. "License and registration," I managed to say, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I blinked and the world shifted. Suddenly the man looked normal. A typical middle-aged guy, 2 eyebrows, skin firmly attached. I rubbed my eyes. Hallucinations, I thought. The fumes. "Sure," he chirped. His voice was gravel being ground through a metal pipe. "Right here." He didn't reach for a glove box. He didn't move a muscle. The document simply appeared in his hand. He held them out, a wide, ecstatic smile stretching across his face. But as my hand reached for the paper, the smile didn't stop at his cheeks. It kept growing, curling up toward his eyes in an impossible crescent-shaped tear. I touched the license. Pain, white and blinding, surged through my arm. I didn't grab a card. I grabbed a rectangular mass of rusted spikes that punched through my palm. I screamed, collapsing to the asphalt as blood leaked from my hand. The driver's door didn't open. It disintegrated. The figure that stepped out was no longer a man. It was a skeletal obsidian black entity, 7 feet tall with eyes that burned like magnesium flares. Its skin slowed off in wet clumps, revealing the pitch black frame beneath. One of its discarded eyeballs hit my boot with a sickening splat. It grabbed my ankle. My bones shattered under a grip like a hydraulic press. It began to drag me towards a shimmering light down the road. I screamed, pulling my service weapon and firing wildly. One shot sliced through the creature's arm, but it didn't care. In a fit of agony, I aimed for the car. I fired 3 rounds into the Lincoln's rear. Instead of gasoline, a thick, hot torrent of red blood sprayed from the bullet holes. The creature let out a deafening, unearthly shriek of sympathetic pain. It let go of my leg, clutching its own chest as the car bled out into the Nevada sand. I crawled. I hauled my broken body into the patrol car, floored the accelerator, and didn't look back until the creature's screams were swallowed by the wind. I woke up in the hospital with a shattered ankle and a hand riddled with holes. The highway patrol chief and my mentor visited me. They didn't ask for a report. They brought a file. The document was labeled Midnight Riders. Inside was a list of every major highway in the country. Next to each was a photo of vintage vehicle. Route 66 Classic Triumph T100 motorcycle. I-95 a Ford Shelby GT500. Route 50 the 1969 Lincoln Continental. They first appeared in the late 50s, the chief said, his face the color of ash. The government tracks them. We don't know what they are, only that they don't belong to this world. They lure prey by breaking the law. They want you to pull them over. Since 1959, 234 officers have vanished. No bodies, just empty patrol cars left idling on the shoulder. The FBI made me sign a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for a full-time position. I'm breaking it now. If you're an officer or just a traveler on a lonely stretch of road and you see an old beauty doing 100 in the dark, stay in your lane. Don't look at the driver. Don't look in the mirror. Because if you stop them, you aren't the one making the arrest. You're the one being harvested. Next story. You've heard the old urban legend about the clown statue, haven't you? The one that still makes people check corners at night? A young babysitter watches 2 children while the parents dine out. Late in the evening, the parents call to check in. The sitter whispers that the kids sleep soundly, then hesitates. She asks permission to watch TV in the master bedroom. They agree. One last question slips out. Can I drape a blanket over that creepy clown statue in the corner? It's staring at me. The line goes quiet, then urgent and low. Get the children. Get out of the house. Call the police right now. Why, she breathes. Because we don't own a clown statue. Chilling, isn't it? I used to dismiss it as nothing more than a campfire tale meant to scare sitters into staying vigilant. I don't anymore. My name is Tammy Kinney, Azusa, California, strung along the ghost of Route 66, not far from Los Angeles. On April 1st, 2013, I married my best friend Nate. 10 months later, our son Kevin arrived. 2 months after that, April Fool's Day again, we celebrated our first anniversary with dinner at 5 on the Hill, high in the Hollywood Hills. City lights glittering far below like dying stars. Our regular sitter was unavailable, so we hired Nancy. First-time client, she seemed sweet, nervous in the right way. We left her with Kevin and drove into the night. 5 delivered a perfect meal, velvet darkness outside the windows, the kind of quiet romance you remember forever, until Nancy called. She just tucked Kevin in, everything fine, then, would you mind if I threw a blanket over that clown statue in the living room? It's giving me the creeps. I forced a laugh. Nice try, Nancy. It's April Fool's. I haven't forgotten the date. I'm serious. I'm not joking. Come on. Everyone knows that stupid story. What story? Enough. Food's getting cold. Goodbye. But, oh God, I swear it just shifted. I hung up. Nate rolled his eyes when I told him. Over the top prank, he said. We finished dessert, lingered on the view, then stopped for fresh strawberry donuts on the way home. The glow died the moment we turned onto our street. 2 patrol cars crouched in front of the house, lights pulsing red and blue. Front door yawned open. My pulse hammered. Intruder, fire, worse. Officers emerged, faces tight with irritation rather than alarm. Nancy, they explained, had dialed 911 claiming a home invasion. They'd kicked in the door, swept the house, found nothing except Nancy crouched in a closet, shrieking, "April's Fools!" The instant flashlight beams hit her. Kevin never stirred. A ticket for misusing emergency services, a partial payment for the hours she'd actually worked. She slunk away into the night. We were furious, but beneath the anger, something cold lingered. Her voice during dinner hadn't sounded rehearsed. It had cracked with real fear. Still, no evidence, just a girl who'd gone too far. We ate the donuts in silence, then crawled into bed. Exhaustion pulled me under until an alien sound dragged me back. A slow, wet stretch, then creaking floorboards. Not ours. Down the hall. No pets. Kevin couldn't climb out of the crib. The creak stopped. Silence thickened. Then Kevin's scream shredded the dark. I froze. Nate was already rising, mumbling sleepy reassurance. "Nate," I hissed. Before he cried, footsteps in the hallway. He snorted. "Tammy, it's after midnight. April Fools. It's over." I heard it. So what? A killer clown strolling around? Come on. I tried to laugh it off. "You're right. Probably the house settling. Wind. Something." He patted down the hall. Kevin's wails stretched endless, then silence. Too complete. "Nate?" I called. "You okay?" "Of course." His voice floated back. "Everything is perfectly—" It cut off, mid-word, like a hand clamped over his mouth. "Nate?" Louder. "Everything is perfectly what?" "Nothing." Panic clawed up my throat. I forced myself out of the bed, each step a betrayal of the floorboards that groaned beneath me. At Kevin's doorway I paused, heart slamming, and peered around the frame. Nate stood there, cradling Kevin, both smiling softly in the night light's glow. Relief flooded me. "Everything's perfectly what, Nate?" "Perfectly fine," he chuckled. "Didn't you hear me? Your voice just stopped." "Weird. Must be the acoustics. See, nothing to worry about." He settled Kevin back in the crib. We returned to bed. I felt foolish, letting one bad prank unravel me. I kissed him good night. His lips tasted wrong. Not toothpaste, not strawberries, metal, copper, blood. I pulled back, opened my eyes. Not Nate's warm brown gaze. Crimson rimmed eyes, tiny jaundiced yellow irises boring into mine. Porcelain skin caked in smeared grease paint. Filthy rainbow wig, a rictus grin, studded with jagged yellow teeth. Brown hairs caught between them like trophies. The thing giggled, low wet, bubbling up from somewhere deep and rotten. It lay motionless beside me, laughter swelling into shrieking hysteria. I bolted. Sprinting down the hall, glancing back, the thing hadn't moved, still sprawled on the sheets, cackling. Kitchen? Knife drawer. I snatched the biggest blade, spun toward the door. It stood behind me, 7 feet of tattered satin and decay. No sound, no footsteps, just there. A flower on its lapel hissed. Acid sprayed across my hand, my cheek. Skin sizzled, knife clattered away. I dropped, writhing. The clown loomed, screeching delight, fingers like talons closing on my shoulders. Its jaws unhinged, impossibly wide, descending. Instinct. I drove my knee upward into its groin. It howled, a sound no human throat could make, and staggered back. I scrambled, seized the knife with my good hand, lunged. Blade sank into the side of its skull. It collapsed. Air hissed from the wound. The body shrank, flattened, rubber skin folding in on itself like a punctured balloon animal. I hacked it apart, doused the pieces in lighter fluid, watched them writhe and blacken in the fireplace until nothing remained but ash and the stink of melted latex. Shaking, I rinsed the burns, checked Kevin, crib empty. A vice snapped around my throat from behind. Teeth, cold, sharp, buried in my neck. Hot blood poured down my collarbone. In the mirror, another clown. Head twisted at a sickening angle, jaws locked. Darkness rushed in. So here's the question that keeps me awake. If I'm telling you this story, who's listening? Next story. After high school, jobs eluded me. A juvenile record, small arsons at home, nothing catastrophic, branded me a liability. No one wanted the risk. I quit flipping burgers and cold called nearly 200 businesses across Albuquerque and beyond. Only one answered, Moss Towing in Mentmore, run by a grizzled Hopi named Bert. Mentmore, New Mexico's murder capital, made me hesitate, but the pay tempted. I packed my few belongings and drove 2 hours west into the high desert. I knew nothing about towing. For weeks, Bert rode me shotgun, drilling the basics with brutal precision. He'd watch me rig a hookup, then dismantle it over one misplaced chain link. I cursed him as a sadist. Later I realized he feared a green kid killing us both. He was right. The real story hit one month in January 11, 2004. I stared at the wall calendar, shift dragging toward 5 p.m. when the phone rang at 4:45. I snatched it, inwardly groaning. Moss Towing, how can I help you? A thick Texas drawl. Is, Bert there? He's around. I can grab him or take a message. I yanked notepad and pen from the drawer. No, just making sure this is the right place. A wet cough. Officer Quincy, got a car off the road near Service Road 9, turnoff. Needs impound. We'll head out. I hung up, exhaling hard. Route 666. The 666. Recovery's always twisted into missing person files. 2 in the last month alone. Records showed over a dozen vanishing in 2 years. Cars ditched, doors flung wide, tracks vanishing into sand. Sometimes a second vehicle stopped to help, left the same way. Bodies never surfaced. Bert emerged from the bathroom, buckling his belt, frowning. Call? Another off-road, Service Road 9? He sighed. Damn. Glanced at his watch. Ride along or stay? I shrugged. Nothing waited but TV, and he judged me for bailing. We rolled out. Bert fired the engine before I buckled. The truck growled through Mentmore's fringes onto the highway. I briefed him on the call. Silence swallowed us after. Stars pierced the indigo sky, sharper, crueler than Albuquerque's haze. We passed Twin Lakes' dim cluster of buildings. The turnoff loomed minutes ahead. Red and blue lights flickered. One state cruiser, odd. Deep on the res, Navajo PD usually handled these. 2 cars minimum. State involvement meant trouble. Bert eased beside the cruiser, rolled down his window. I leaned forward. Beyond, a red minivan nosed into the dirt berm. All doors gaping, contents vomited across the ground. Junk everywhere. Ugly tow. Howdy, Officer Quincy, Bert called. The trooper turned. Trooper hat, oversized shades hiding most of his face, skin around a patchy beard, looked jaundiced and wasted, like he'd crawled from some hill cabin and never left. Seconds ticked, then a stiff mechanical nod. Bert eyed the wreck. Are we good to hook it? Tex cleared the scene? Another jerky nod. Bert flicked me a glance, wary. Both of us carried records. One wrong move with a twitchy cop could end careers. Tension stretched. Then Bert pressed his flip phone into my ribs. I palmed it. Set the hazard cones, he said too loud. I slid out, grabbed cones and flashlight from the storage panel, placed them south and circled into the headlights wash for the rest. Dispatches, hold music blasted in my ear, obnoxious, deafening. I winced half deaf. That's why I missed it at first. Rising from the last cone, a garbled shout rasped from the left, off the acequia. Chill clawed my spine. I swung the flashlight. A coyote crouched across the ditch. Mangy, yellow-brown fur. Eyes. God, those eyes. Burned with famine and something darker, almost human malice. His jaw sagged open like a broken hinge. I can't get the hazards on. The voice slithered out. Deep yet hollow, wrong in pitch and timbre. Not animal, not human. A mockery stitched together from nightmares. I stumbled back. Headlights bleached everything left of the beast into shadow. Boss! My shout cracked. Bert's voice shifted from irritation to raw terror in one breath. What, boy? The coyote vaulted his sequoia on a single fluid leap. Advanced. Shit! Don't turn your back. Don't meet its eyes. Back toward the truck. Slow. Run and you're dead. I retreated, muscles screaming to bolt. Every instinct howled, flee, turn and die. I chanted it silently. The thing inched closer, paws scraping asphalt, mouth lolled again. I can't get the hazards on. Closer. Panic petrified me. I knew the second I panicked I'd run. Legs buckled. I felt hard, eyes locked on it. It coiled to lunge. Gunshots cracked the night. Air hissed past my ear. I flipped, sprinted, ripped the door open, dove inside. Bert slammed reverse. Tires shrieked. The cruiser rocked violently, something inside thrashing. As distance swallowed it, I swear I glimpsed the coyote step onto the pavement, upright, on two legs. We tore back toward Metmore in silence. 15 minutes of numb shock. Finally, what the hell was that? Navajo shit, Bert grunted. It talked. How? You shot it. Regular rounds just piss him off. Like that trooper learned. I rambled. It jumped me. Attacked the cruiser. Bert drove like hell, 20 over. Back at the shop, he dropped the garage door, killed the engine, led me inside. Brewed coffee, handed me a mug. We sat apart in the waiting area. Drink. No sleep tonight. Why? He exhaled. What we saw, Navajo spirit, faster, stronger, human animal mix, chase instinct like coyotes, run and it triggers. Only way out, truck, straight line, solid building, lock everything. Cover windows, stay awake till dawn. They lose interest. Maybe. See one again, find a shaman. He shuffled off, returned with blankets and rags. We blacked out every window, talked till sunrise. Bert's life held stranger tales. I might share more if you want. Next day, I crashed for 24 hours. We avoided res calls for a week. Partly the incident, partly a massive Route 66 pileup. Months later, a res cop mentioned it casually. January, a state trooper staggered naked to a trailer miles away, unscratched. His cruiser, drenched in blood, coyote and human, none his. Just another ghost on the Devil's Highway. The first I've lived through. But those roads remember. And sometimes out in the dark between towns, something still mimics a voice you trust, waiting for you to answer.